Day 29. The mortars did not begin until just before dawn. The first salvo struck the western Royal Lao perimeter, followed quickly by impacts near the center. The Royal Lao artillery responded with force, but I could hear gaps between batteries. Some guns fired hard, while others were silent longer than before. At first light, visibility was sharp and cold. The northern ridges looked like a constructed wall now. Trenches, sandbag parapets, overhead cover, all clearly visible in outline against the morning sky. What once looked like scattered positions now resembles a continuous front. Mid-morning, our ridge took sustained fire, not just 1 or 2 rounds, but 5 mortar impacts within a span of minutes, walking from east to west across our slope. One landed close enough to collapse part of our western trench. No serious injuries, but the message was unmistakable. I ordered immediate displacement drills, rotating squads through secondary trenches and fallback positions. We cannot be caught stationary if a larger barrage precedes an assault. Around noon, we observed something new. Enemy soldiers moving in assault spacing, wider intervals, rifles ready, scanning upward, even though no attack followed. They are practicing approach routes in daylight under artillery threat. The distance between forward scrapes and our trench line is measured in a few dozen steps now. The siege has matured fully. What remains is the decision of timing, and I believe that decision is no longer far away. Day 30. The mortars began before 3 o'clock, heavier than any previous night. Not a single continuous barrage, but disciplined waves striking specific sectors in sequence. First, the eastern Royal Lao perimeter, a pause long enough for men to lift their heads. Then the western edge. Then, deliberately, 2 rounds landing near the Royal Lao artillery pits. The Royal Lao guns answered immediately, roaring into the darkness with intensity. For several minutes the valley shook under outgoing fire. But after the first few salvos, the rhythm slowed. At first light, the valley looked worn in a way it never has before. Smoke lingered longer than usual, hanging low and gray between the ridges. I could see damaged bunkers being repaired. Royal Lao soldiers carried sandbags instead of standing guard. Fewer men moved in open view. Even from this distance, the posture below has changed. It is no longer confidence. It is no longer even simple defense, it's endurance. By mid-morning, our ridge was struck again, 3 mortar rounds in rapid succession along our western flank. One impacted within 15 meters of our primary trench. The blast stunned 2 men briefly and showered us with dirt and splinters. No serious injuries, but the precision is undeniable now. We shifted positions immediately, cycling squads through secondary trenches and widening dispersion along the contour. We cannot remain predictable, even for a single day. The enemy adjusts carefully from previous impacts. If we stay still, they will correct. Around noon, we observed the largest coordinated movement yet. Multiple enemy elements advanced under trench cover across 3 ridges. I counted at least 70 men in visible sectors combined. Some carried ammunition crates. Others carried heavier tubes and tripods, likely mortars or recoilless rifles being brought forward to final firing positions. They are not building anymore. They are staging. In the afternoon, sustained automatic fire erupted from the southern edge of the valley, louder and longer than before. It rolled continuously for nearly 25 minutes before fading. The Royal Lao artillery fired in support, but in shorter bursts now, less overwhelming than in the first weeks. Fatigue is everywhere now, in the rhythm of the guns, in the slower response times, in the way men below move with shoulders slightly bent, as if the sky itself is heavier. The Royal Lao artillery has been pounding these ridges for a month with little visible effect. The North Vietnamese have absorbed it, rebuilt, deepened their trenches, reinforced overhead cover, rotated fresh troops forward. The pounding has not stopped them. It has only forced them to prepare more carefully. Weather has betrayed us as well. Low cloud cover and shifting fog have limited air support. Some days, no aircraft appear at all. Resupply drops have been non-existent. They have tightened the ring deliberately, patiently, with discipline. They are not trying to destroy us in a single blow. They are wearing us down. Day 31. The mortars began again before dawn, but today there was something different in the timing. The first impact struck near the Royal Lao artillery pits, not the outer perimeter. Direct pressure on the Royal Lao guns immediately. The rounds landed in tight grouping, closer together than I have seen before. They are no longer feeling for range. They know it. The Royal Lao artillery answered quickly, but the response was uneven. At first light, smoke clung to the valley floor like a low ceiling. I could see men repairing earthworks again, sandbags stacked higher. Timber reinforcement added to bunker roofs. The posture below is fully defensive now. No one walks upright unless necessary. By mid-morning, our ridge took sustained harassment fire again, for mortar rounds impacted in a rough arc across our western side. One struck just beyond our fallback trench. If we had not rotated positions yesterday, we would have taken casualties, and that had become the daily routine, playing cat and mouse with the enemy mortar team. I ordered dispersion even wider today. Squads are now separated by greater distance along the contour. Communication is by runner more often than radio to conserve batteries. We speak less over the air now to avoid the enemy listening. Around noon, we observed fresh movement along a ridge that had been quiet for days. New enemy troops with clean uniforms. Enemy reinforcements continue to rotate forward. Their manpower does not appear strained. In the afternoon, we heard heavier detonations again. Unmistakable recoilless rifle fire. Seconds later, explosions erupted near the Royal Lao artillery sector. The balance is shifting slowly. Food is being rationed more tightly now. I reduced rice portions slightly this evening without announcing it as such. The men notice, but they do not complain. Water remains sufficient, but if supply drops continue to decrease, that may change. The weather has remained stubborn. Low clouds limit air support. Without aircraft, the enemy moves more boldly during daylight. I saw several trench sections being extended openly this afternoon, something they would not have attempted in earlier weeks in broad daylight. 31 days in, and the siege feels settled into its final shape. The North Vietnamese own the high ground almost entirely. Their trench networks are connected, their mortars precise, their heavier weapons active, and increasingly confident. Enemy fresh troops rotate, and while we grow thinner in supplies and heavier in fatigue, it is about endurance now, and endurance always has a limit. Day 32. The mortars came before dawn again. The explosions landed tight and deliberate, forcing the Royal Lao gun crews to take cover before they could respond. When the valley artillery finally answered, it was sharp but short. The enemy is targeting the heart now. At first light, the valley looked strained. Smoke drifted lazily between bunkers. I could see fewer men moving openly. More stayed low behind reinforced earth walls. The perimeter below feels compressed, as if the air itself is pressing inward. By mid-morning, our ridge was struck again, 2 mortar rounds landing almost exactly where impacts fell 3 days ago. They are refining through repetition. One blast shook our forward trench hard enough to crack part of the parapet. No serious injuries, but the message is clear. They have memorized this slope. I ordered another slight shift westward along the contour, not abandon the ridge, but to never let the enemy calculate us precisely. Around noon, we observed organized movement across multiple ridges once more. I counted nearly 80 men rotating between trench systems. In the afternoon, sustained automatic fire erupted from the eastern sector of the valley, louder than in recent days. It lasted nearly 30 minutes. The Royal Lao artillery fired in support, but the response felt limited and controlled. The Royal Lao command post below feels like a bowl surrounded by prepared walls, each wall reinforced and manned by disciplined troops who have spent a month studying every slope and adjusting every weapon. They are positioning for the next phase, and I believe that phase will not wait much longer. Day 33. The night brought no rest. Around 1:40 at night, mortars began striking in a slow, deliberate pattern. Not heavy, but persistent. 1 round every few minutes, landing in different sectors of the valley. It felt less like destruction and more like erosion, sleep prevention. The Royal Lao artillery responded twice during the night, but only briefly. The thunder from the Royal Lao artillery that once rolled across these ridges for long stretches now comes in short bursts. The valley's strength is still present, but it feels measured. At first light, I saw something that made the change unmistakable. Along the northern ridge, where once there were scattered bunkers, there is now a continuous trench line running across the slope. I could follow it with my eyes for several hundred meters. The line is completed. They are no longer building positions. They have finished building. By mid-morning, our ridge took small arms fire, controlled bursts snapping through branches above our trench. They were not aiming blindly. The rounds were placed along likely firing arcs. We did not return fire. Around 10:30, 2 mortar rounds impacted just beyond our western fallback position, and we shifted again, continuing this game of cat and mouse. The men no longer need explanation. When I signal movement, they move, with no questions and no hesitation. Around noon, I observed even more enemy elements advancing along trench networks in timed intervals across 3 ridges simultaneously today. I counted close to 100 men in visible sectors combined. In the afternoon, heavy detonations echoed from the northern ridge once more, enemy recoilless rifles firing toward the valley interior, hitting a Royal Lao artillery ammunition that erupted in explosion. The enemy forward team now sit within sprinting distance, and their trench lines are connected, their mortars are precise, and their heavier weapons are striking at the heart of the valley, along with fresh enemy troops rotating forward as ours grow thinner. Day 34. The mortars began again before dawn, but today they were paired with something new: coordinated small arms fire, striking the valley perimeter at the same time the shells landed. Suppression layered over bombardment. It lasted longer than previous mornings, nearly 20 minutes of sustained pressure before easing. At first light, the valley looked hollowed. Smoke drifted across the floor like low fog. I could see some artillery pieces appeared partially shielded by additional sandbags. Repairs are constant now. By mid-morning, our ridge received coordinated harassment. Not just mortars, but small arms bursts walking along the tree line while a single mortar round landed just downslope. They are testing combined suppression against elevated positions. One of our younger soldiers flinched when a round snapped overhead. I placed a hand on his shoulder and steadied him. Fear spreads quickly if not contained. We did not return fire and shifted positions again. We have moved so many times that our trench line is now more of a network than a fixed location. That may be the only advantage left to us in this unpredictability. Around noon, we observed steady enemy reinforcement movement across the northern trench systems. I counted nearly a full company-sized presence across visible sectors. Some soldiers rested behind cover while others moved forward, rotation under pressure. In the afternoon, enemy recoilless rifle fire echoed again, followed by visible impacts near the Royal Lao artillery pits. This time, I saw one gun crew scramble away from their position before returning cautiously. The valley guns fired back, but shorter than ever even before. Food portions have been reduced again. No one complains. Air support has been almost absent for days. Low cloud cover and shifting visibility make aircraft unreliable. They are rehearsing the final act, and I can feel it, not in the noise of battle, but in the silence between barges. Day 35. The mortars began at 2:20, heavier than yesterday, and more tightly grouped. The first impact struck near the Royal Lao artillery sector again. Then they shifted outward in a deliberate arc across the perimeter. It was controlled, synchronized, almost methodical. The Royal Lao guns answered immediately, and for a brief stretch the valley roared like it did in the early weeks. But the Royal Lao artillery fire did not last long. At first light, the valley looked scarred. Fresh craters dotted the perimeter. I could see men reinforcing positions that have already been reinforced twice before. Some Royal Lao artillery pieces now sit behind extra layers of sandbags and timber. They are being protected more carefully. By mid-morning, our ridge took combined harassment again. Mortars landed downslope while small arms fire cracked through the tree line above us. It felt coordinated, suppression from 2 angles at once. One mortar round impacted close enough to send fragments into our western trench. One man was bruised but still steady. We shifted again, widening dispersion even further. At this point, our ridge is less a fixed line and more a scattered chain of concealed positions. Around noon, I observed sustained movement across the enemy northern trench systems. Enemy units rotating through firing positions as if changing shifts. Some enemy soldiers sat behind parapets calmly, rifles resting on sandbags, watching the valley through prepared firing slits. In the afternoon, enemy recoilless rifle fire echoed twice from the northern ridge. The impacts near the Royal Lao artillery pits were sharp and direct. The Royal Lao return fire was brief. Food is thin now. Rice portions have been reduced again. We speak little about it, but everyone feels it. Hunger sits quietly in the stomach and sharpens the mind in unpleasant ways. Air support did not appear today again. Low clouds drifted in and out all afternoon. Tonight, as the year ends, there are no celebrations. Only the distant sound of boots shifting in trenches and tools biting into earth. The old year leaves us surrounded. The new year will decide what becomes of this valley. Day 36. The new year began the same way the old one ended, with enemy mortars. They started just after 1 o'clock at night, striking first near the Royal Lao artillery pits again. The enemy no longer wastes time softening outer edges anymore. They are targeting the center of resistance. The rounds landed close together, walking inward in deliberate sequence. The Royal Lao guns answered quickly, and for several minutes the valley thundered. For a moment, it almost sounded like the early days, loud, confident, overwhelming. But the fire did not sustain. After a handful of heavy salvos, the rhythm slowed again. The Royal Lao artillery guns are still there, but their strength feels thinner. At first light, the valley looked gray and exhausted. Smoke hung in the cold air, refusing to rise again. I could see more bunker roofs reinforced with fresh timber. Craters remain unfilled now in some sectors, too many to repair quickly. By mid-morning, our ridge was bracketed again. 2 mortar rounds landed downslope, then one struck just beyond our eastern trench. The precision had been unsettling the past few days now. We shifted again, smaller adjustments now because there is little ground left to give without abandoning observation entirely. Around noon, I observed one of the clearest signs yet that the next phase approaches. Enemy soldiers moved openly along trench lines in organized formations. They are not hiding anymore. In the afternoon, enemy recoilless rifle fire echoed twice from the northern ridge. The impacts near the Royal Lao artillery sector were sharp and direct. The Royal Lao return fire was brief. The same old sound of exchanging artillery shots between both sides. Today a sight of hope, one lone Royal Lao T-28 aircraft passing high overhead, but due to the constant visibility issue, the T-28 left without engaging, and without sustained air pressure on the enemy. Their trench systems remain intact. The enemy has spent over a month studying every elevation, adjusting every weapon, and tightening every sector. The new year has begun, and I believe it will not be long before the siege becomes something far more violent. Day 37. The mortars began earlier tonight, directly at 12 midnight. Not heavy at first, but steady. 1 round every few minutes, striking alternating sectors of the valley. It was not destruction they were after. It was exhaustion today, and sleep is becoming a luxury. At 4:15, the pattern changed. A concentrated barrage struck near the Royal Lao artillery pits again. Several impacts landed within seconds of each other. The valley guns answered immediately, but the response sounded strained. The mountains no longer shake from the Royal Lao artillery the way they did weeks ago. At first light, I could see visible damage near one of the artillery positions. A gun sat slightly angled, its crew working around it carefully. Whether damaged or simply repositioned, I cannot tell from this distance. By mid-morning, our ridge took small arms fire again, controlled bursts directed at likely observation points. They are no longer guessing. They are suppressing specific tree lines. Shortly after, 2 mortar rounds landed downslope from our western trench, followed by a third that struck behind our secondary position. They are mapping both our primary and fallback locations. We shifted again, but movement options are narrowing. Every meter we give reduces our view of the valley floor. Around noon, I observed the most organized staging yet. Enemy elements in assault spacing moved into forward scrapes across 2 ridges simultaneously. I counted at least a platoon-sized group in one sector alone, rifles up, scanning downward. They were not carrying supply crates. They were readying for contact. In the afternoon, sustained automatic fire erupted from the eastern valley perimeter, louder and longer than in recent days. The exchange lasted nearly half an hour. The Royal Lao artillery fired in support, but the response was short. 37 days in, and the pattern is undeniable. Enemy mortars precise, heavy weapons active, fresh troops continue rotating forward. It is a siege poised, and something poised this long does not wait forever.